Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. What we have for you today is our preview video going into Game Week 14, and with the deadline only 2 days away, we've got loads that we need to fit into this video. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe. The support is really appreciated and it does make all the difference as we are a small channel trying to grow. So thank you to all the people who've supported the channel so far. In this video, we're going to take a quick review of how my team did in this game week. Then we're going to look ahead to Game Week 14 with team selection, transfer advice, and captaincy options. But first of all, let's take a look at how my team did in Game Week 13. So as we get the team on the board, it was a green arrow, which might not seem like the biggest of news in the whole world, but when you've had 7 red arrows in the last 8 game weeks, it really is welcome. And not only that, but Sunday was a massive day for us. Salah, Bruno Fernandes and Palmer all returned. Colwell kept his clean sheet, which is really rare in the Premier League these days that players seem to be keeping clean sheets. And it was the right decision to captain Cole Palmer as well, as he was the highest scoring player out of all our team. Even Strand Larsen came in with 2 goals on Saturday, and it was a really good point swing because players like Matthias Cunha, who a lot of people had gotten in this game week, actually blanked, and we kept hold of Strand Larsen and he got those 2 goals. So it was actually a green arrow of about 170k, which was really nice for the team. There are players like Brian and Buemo, Semenyo, Isak that are on the chopping block, but we're going to talk more about transfers later on in the video. But I do have to give a mention to Kevin Schade because we owned him for about 6 or 7 game weeks. If you've been in contact with the channel for a while, you'll know this, that we brought him in as a fun pick, and he seemed to get a chance cleared off the line every single game week. And we took him out on wildcard a couple of weeks ago, and then he goes and gets a hat-trick and an assist this game week, and I think he was the highest scoring player in the entire Premier League in FPL for game week 13. And I get it if you take Haaland out and he scores a hat-trick in the next game week, but Kevin Schade actually scored more goals on Saturday than he did in his previous 41 games for Brentford, and I'm really happy for him as a player. Great for him, but I just wish he'd done it 3 weeks ago. And that's maybe just a story for you guys, because you'll all have a player like this that you take out, and then a couple of weeks they score loads of points. So when that happens to you, you can at least look back and say, well, it wasn't quite a bigger swing as Kevin Schade, because that would have been the ultimate differential for points, getting 23 points, I think, more than anyone else, because no one else would have had him in, and we just missed out on that. It would have turned it into an absolute ultimate game week. But I can't be too disappointed because he's also the sort of player that you would have had in all season, and that wouldn't have happened. So sometimes you've got to make decisions. It doesn't mean it was a bad decision. It's just one of those classic FPL things. So the fixtures for this game week are really interesting because, like we said, it's a midweek game week, and that does make captaincy quite, a bit more intense because there's such a small turnaround in time between games. So you really want to be focusing on the players who are either captains, they're playing 90 minutes for the teams, or the big part of the attack for their squads. And that just leaves us with the usual suspects of Haaland, Palmer, Saka and Salah. Now, for me, I'd probably rule out Haaland because when these players are all bunched together like we're talking about here, you really need to take form into account. And whilst Man City are at home, and at some point they are going to win again and Haaland will score again, I just don't see any need to back him ahead of the other options, especially when they play a Nottingham Forest team who are really confident and aren't conceding many goals themselves. I don't think this is the time that you would captain Haaland. For me, it has to be Cole Palmer. That game against Southampton, when they're missing Ramsdale in goal and a couple of defenders and midfielders, they just seem a little bit all over the place. And Cole Palmer, we know, has big scoring potential. He's done it this week, he's done it previously in the season, and I think he is the player with the highest upside. Even that Salah game, Newcastle away, that's not easy. I know Newcastle aren't playing the best football right now, but for me, it just has to be Cole Palmer. That Arsenal-Man United game could honestly go either way. You never know what those games are going to turn up with. Cole Palmer just seems to be the most obvious choice. And when that's the case, just don't overthink it. So I'll be captaining Cole Palmer again. And there's not really a doubt in my mind to do otherwise. So this is the team for this game week. And it's not too bad. The main question we have is that we want to take out Brian and Buemo. That was always the plan at this stage. I also had another plan earlier in the season to take Haaland out after game week 3 regardless, but I stuck with it and it didn't quite work out. So I am quite focused to stick with that original plan that I've got now regarding Brian and Buemo. I actually have 4 free transfers in the bank So I do have a bit of, transfers to play with. I've got no money spare, so I do have to sell in order to upgrade. Now, where would I do that from? Well, the team that I could do, or the transfers I could make, are Brian Mbeumo to Jared Bowen. Now, this could be a standalone transfer. I don't have to use all 4 transfers because I'm not actually saving any money here. This is just a situation where I look at Brian Mbeumo and he's had not really any chances in the last 3 game weeks, despite the good fixtures. I look at his fixtures coming up. They're pretty difficult. Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea and Forest. And then I look at Jared Bowen and I've got Leicester, Wolves, Bournemouth and Brighton. Well, that looks a lot better. And as we said, Jared Bowen is really a big part of the West Ham squad. And although West Ham aren't playing well, good fixtures, creates good form. Another transfer I could do is Alexander Isak to Will Lancashire from Spurs. Now, why would I be doing this transfer? Well, it's to upgrade the midfield, but it's not enough to get Saka in, which is what I'm aiming for. So I would have to do Robinson to Quansah and then Semenyo up to Saka. Now, hear me out. I know that it means my squad would really lack bench depth, but if you start as a guaranteed 90 minutes, do I really need that depth? I would still have playing defenders. I'd still have a player like Face from Leicester City on my bench as a first option if I needed them to come in. And you might think, well, the upside for your bench, it's not there at all. They're not going to score any points. Well, I don't really want points on my bench. I don't want to have to rely on bench players because sooner or later, that means I'm going to have a load of points left on my bench. How many players do you have in your starting 11 every week who score you 1 or 2 points? I would say probably about 4 or 5, sometimes even 6 on a bad week. You just rely on your big hitters scoring you points. Well, this gets me a big hitter in Saka. Now, I'd be missing out on Isak with Leicester and Ipswich, but it's really a case of would Saka be worth it? Because Robinson doesn't have good fixtures. Will Lancashire's not going to play for Spurs. I'm very aware of that. Quansah is someone who could get rotated in. Now Konate's out. He is someone that might get the odd start. So I could put him in my starting 11 because he's very likely to come on as a sub. So if I put him in my starting 11 and he doesn't play, then my good player or another defender on the bench would come in. And, if he does play, I'd be having a chance of getting a reasonable clean sheet from Liverpool. So with this, the team looks as follows if I was to make these 4 transfers. So the midfield looks awesome. I don't think you could find a better 5-player midfield. Watkins and Strand Larsen looks okay up front. Watkins isn't in great form and Strand Larsen could be inconsistent. So there is the possibility to sell Watkins at some point and upgrade elsewhere. But all of those players in that team are going to play and they're going to start. Now, the defence is possibly a problem because Davis, Colwell, Hall and Face really don't play for teams who keep clean sheets consistently. But Face does have West Ham, Brighton, Newcastle and Wolves in the next 4. That's not too bad. Davies has Palace, Bournemouth, Wolves and Newcastle. That's good. Hall has Liverpool, Brentford, Leicester and Ipswich. Well, that's really good apart from the Liverpool game. And then Colwell has Southampton, Spurs, Brentford and Everton. Well, they're not terrible fixtures, especially if I'm just picking 3 out of 4 every week. One of those players will be on the bench. And I don't really see a situation where any of the midfield or strikers don't start unless they're injured. Now, it's a case of only making either 1 transfer or 4 transfers because Mbeumo to Bowen is happening anyway. If I wanted to upgrade to Saka, I would need to sell the other players in order to get the funds. Now, Semenyo to Saka does make sense and it gives me a lot of big hitters. I did actually look at swapping out Bruno Fernandes and getting in Saka, but I couldn't really spread the funds elsewhere in order to make it count. I was kind of still left with either a bench I wasn't entirely happy with, and if I'm going to commit to having a light bench, I should really commit. Bruno has Arsenal, Forest and Man City in the next 3, so it was a bit like, do I take him out for those fixtures? But Man United could be turning a corner here, and confidence is everything in football, so I do want to sort of ride that wave a little bit. Could just do Mbeumo to Bowen. Saka does have Man United at home, so do I need him in this game week? don't need to force it. The problem I do have is that I don't have any flexibility with transfer funds. So if there's any price changes in any of these 4 transfers, I can't afford it and I wouldn't be able to afford Saka. So the pressure is on a little bit as to whether I get ahead of it now or risk waiting for the price changes to happen. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'd be really interested to know whether you think I should just do the 1 transfer or whether I should go all in and get 4 transfers done. I would always like to have 2 free transfers in reserve, because if a player does get injured, you can swap him and then use those funds elsewhere, or take a player out elsewhere in your squad to upgrade that injured player to someone else. Also, let me know if you've got any transfer questions of your own, and how did your game week go? Did you get a green arrow like me, or are you on a bit of a slide like I was up until this game week? So thank you very much for listening. Good luck in this next game week. Hopefully you just enjoy the football coming thick and fast, and I will see you in the next one.